All right, welcome back. We are COMP397. That's web game programming in the winter 2022 semester at Centennial, and it's week one, part one of our broadcast. Now, before we even go into any of the slides that I've got prepared for you today, which are very few, just wanted to make a note that this course, for those people that are watching it, I'm recording the session for your group as well as for the group that's on Fridays. I'm recording it earlier this week because you have the whole week to take a look at it for those people who are going to watch on Fridays, because I'm going to have some things that are due near the end of the week. One thing to note is that although it's called web game programming, the web components are going to be quite few. What we're actually going to be doing in this course, as you're going to see before we start, is we're going to be working with Unity, and we're going to be building a mobile app. We're going to use web technologies for prototyping only. So even though it's called web game programming, we're actually going to make a game with Unity, which is pretty cool, and we're using web technologies. All right, let's move on to who I am and what we're doing. So this is me. Not too long ago, believe it or not. I had a little bit more hair than I have now. One thing I'd like to say is that I've been teaching technology to adults for a while, since 2011. I've been at Centennial since 2015, for those of you who don't know me. I have I've made a bunch of games over the years, and some favorite games of mine lately that I've been playing, actually face to face and even through Tabletop Simulator, are Dungeons and Dragons, believe it or not, and Warhammer 40K. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons from near on 30 years, and Warhammer 40K for about 20, I would say. So it's way out there. I'm doing my master's in VR security interactions at Ontario Tech. Should be completed by the end of the year, and I should be able to defend by December, and then we'll go on from there. So that's a bit about me. I can tell you that there's a bunch of stuff I love doing, and one of them is developing games for the mobile platform, which is why I've put together this course for you. So this is my course that I've put together, and so that we're going to have all kinds of crazy times together this second half of semester. Let's see how it goes. All right, so really what we're doing is I'm going to talk about what we're building, which is what are you allowed to build, and so on. One thing to note is we're going to be building a game in 3D. All right, so it's a mobile game in 3D. The decision was made when Wallace and I were creating the courses together. He put together COMP305, which is Game Programming 1, which some of you have taken with me last semester, or you've taken with other professors before. And that course was based on COMP391, which was Intro to Games and Simulation, if I'm not wrong. And we kind of said that COMP305 would be a 2D course, and COMP397 would start you into 3D. And it would be 3D with mobile game dev. So that's kind of the way we went with it. So we're going to be talking about Blender. We're going to be talking about Git and GitHub. We're going to be talking about Unity 3D. We're going to be working with different rendering pipelines for this course. So we're going to look, kind of use the URP, Universal Render Pipeline, which is a scriptable pipeline, compared to using the standard, pipeline. And the reason why is because the scriptable pipeline works great with mobile. It actually works really good. You can do a lot of post-processing effects and those kind of things that we're going to be talking about. So that's kind of where we're at, for today. That's what we're doing. And let's get into the evaluation. So really this course, although there is a bunch of you, this isn't really a project-based course. Last semester, for some of you who did a course with me, which was COMP305, which is Game Programming 1, that was a project-based course. This one, we have two distinct assignments that are broken out into 3 parts. Okay, now the assignments are group assignments. And originally, when we built this course, the idea was that you were supposed to, be doing this with 1 or 2 people. So it was kind of like a course to build capability, so that when you did the next course, which was, Game Programming 2, as an example, then you would have all the skills that were required with everything to be able to be a great team member. However, there's some hiccups with this. idea that have come out since we started this course, and one of them is that there are some of you that have never taken a course with Unity before. So for those people, and there's no embarrassment here, are there any of you who've never done Unity? Check mark in now. Let's test this out. Check mark if you've never done Unity before. Okay, so I've got a couple so far. 3, 4. So think about that, guys. This course was supposed to be a course only for game devs, but actually it's turned out that it's not only for game devs. Thanks, guys, for that one. So there's some people that have never done it before. They've never taken Unity before. And there's probably, with that, if they've never taken Unity before, that means they have not the same level of training as some of you who've done COMP391, COMP305, and so on, which means I need to review some stuff when it comes to Unity, what Unity is, and so on. And that means that there's going to be a bit of a review today, and some tools downloads and everything else that I want you guys to do. So please, what I'd ask is be patient. It's going to cover new ground anyway, because I'm going to cover different things than we did last semester in Unity either way. But for those people who've done game dev, I'm going to re-explain some stuff that might be very apparent to you, but new for some other people. So you're asking, do we have a recording? Yeah, it's being recorded right now on YouTube. Again, the live link for YouTube for those people who need to watch it live and get good closed captioning support for those people who are international students where English is not your first language. If you wanted to get closed captioning support, I'm a little bit behind when you watch it on on YouTube, because it's about 2 to 3 seconds behind. But the great thing is you can always backtrack, kind of thing, as well. So I'll be doing this every time we get together, every Monday. I'll be recording our class, and then it'll be available for people who are going to be taking this course on Friday, as well as for the entire week, just in case you need to review what we've talked about. This is the only recording. So this is a live recording only. I'm doing synchronous classes, different than what we did last semester for those people who I had. So if you're used to watching the video on your own and all that kind of stuff, you can still do that if you miss a class. But for the most part, I'll be kind of going through everything with you guys synchronously on Mondays. Okay, that's the plan anyway. All right, so if you notice, there's like a couple things to note. One is the evaluation structure is different than maybe in some other courses. There's really 2 big assignments, assignment 1 and assignment 2. Okay. Assignment 1 has some parts and assignment 2 has some parts. There's a final presentation that takes the place of your final exam in this course. And there's also weekly labs. Okay, that means there's labs that are individual marks. They're worth 2% each. And I'm taking the best 10 labs that you're going to give me this semester. So if we do a lab every single week, subtracting the, the final presentation lab and maybe another lab in the middle, you're looking at probably the best 12 or 10 out of 12 labs. Okay, that's what we're doing. So please make sure you attend every week and submit your individual work that's required for you by the end of the week. That's where the labs comes in. So there's actually like a lab component. Okay, now the labs are going to be done in the second hour or second half of the time we're together. So the first half, we do a bit of a lecture, and then I start doing a tech demo. The tech demo will guide you through what you need for your lab. It's literally, you follow me and you get your marks, right? However, if you missed class, you can always look at this video, do the stuff that I've shown you in the video, and then ta-da, you've got your lab mark. Okay, it's that simple. It's actually like free marks for the most part. Okay, however, there are some things we're going to be talking about this semester that are going to be done differently than we've done in the past. All right, let's talk about this in terms of structure. So what are we doing today? So really, we're going to be doing, hey, what is game dev a little bit? What we used to use HTML5 and WebGL, and now we don't anymore. And in fact, the previous iterations of this course, I've done a couple of them. One of them was with a framework called Create.js and TypeScript, where we did everything from scratch. We built our own game engine with web technologies. And then I did another one with C++ and in Scriptum. where actually we made use of a C++ little game engine that we wrote together. And then we use Emscriptum to kind of push it out to the web semi-successfully. And finally we said, well, you know what, that's really great, but it'd be nice if we had more background in C++. So we took the C++ out and we went with Unity. And this is this iteration where we have Unity. We do the first half is all WebGL prototyping. And then in the second half, we're going to actually push everything out to a mobile device. Okay, so we're going to be talking about how to do that. So the first 6 weeks, really 7 weeks, are really building your capability and all that kind of stuff. We talk about some basic concepts of, hey, what is Unity? It's a game engine. And we're going to get you to download a bunch of stuff today and talk about GitHub and those kind of things. I'm also going to talk a little bit about Blender and how it can help us build the game that we're going to make for the first assignment as well as for the second assignment. Let's talk about that. So if you've never heard about Blender, if you're new and you're not a game student, you're a software engineering student, which is totally fine, then Blender will be another tool set you'll learn this semester as well. However, the game students, they've already taken Blender, so this will be a review of Blender and how to use Blender to bring 3D objects into Unity. How to do that, and how does Blender, the new version of Blender, how does that work with Unity? There's a brand new version of Blender that just got released, and has Unity kept up? Can you still drag and drop a blend file in Unity? And you'll see that it's not possible anymore. Well, not yet. It will be eventually. So that is where we're going with the stuff today. So it's really kind of an intro, and intro. Okay, we're going to be doing lots of introductions today. Next week, we're going to be talking about the graphics pipeline. We're going to be talking about the Unity order of execution and lifecycle, character controllers and movement in 3D, and those kind of things. Physics, the death plane, respawn points, all those kind of things, similar to what you've done last semester if you're with me in game programming 1, but in 3D. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're talking about light and shadow in the third week, which is what is light? How do you do shadows? How do shadow maps work? Are they efficient for mobile? The answer is no. How do we make the most of them? And then get right into the anatomy of a camera in week 4. So different kinds of cameras were totally different than what we've done in COMP305, because you're going to be probably using a third-person perspective camera or a first-person perspective camera, which is very, very different than what we've done before. UI layouts, again, we're going to kind of review UI layouts in week 5, post-processing effects in week 6, and then we have a short break, 1 week, which kind of aligns with Family Day from, I believe, February 21st to the 28th. Then we're back in at school on week 7, where we do, we're getting into sounds and impulse sounds, and then your assignment 1 part 3 would be due at the end of week 7. Okay, so remember, assignment 1's due, and that's kind of the first half. That describes the first half of semester where you're doing everything with WebGL and you built your first assignment. I'll talk about the first assignment, which is the first part's due, by the way, next week. So we'll talk about that. The second half is all mobile game dev. So now you've built your first little game. You've gotten used to Unity 3D. You made it, kind of made a simple platform, and now you're going to build something that's more complex, and it's going to be with on mobile. There's going to be some options for building a game on mobile, and the first thing we're going to be talking about is how to do that, how to build for a virtualization engine like that's used for LD Player. That's what we're doing. And then the second half after that, we're going to be talking about mobile game design. There's some considerations for mobile design as opposed to doing things for desktop. Procedural generation in week 10, multiplayer networking in week 11, the Unity post-processing stack in week 12. And you can see that week 13 and week 14, notice there's only week 13 there. Week 13 and week 14, week 13 is special topics, and week 14 is your final presentations. And that's what is happening here. All right, so that is the course structure in a nutshell. But let's briefly talk about some stuff the way it is. So in the course shell, you have a lot of little topics that are that I've kind of put together. Okay, so as an example, right? So inside of here, you can see that there is a slot that says weekly video, where it says the YouTube video. Well, that YouTube video, instead of being placed in here, is actually going to be down in here where it says live session. So live sessions, that weekly video, that's how we'll be doing it. And we're going to be talking about version control inside here. If you actually read through some of the content in the course, it talks about version control. So things that we'll be talking about today, you'll be seeing some diagrams and so on here that you can refer to about how to use version control again. And I'll be talking about some stuff for those people who've never done it before with Unity. I'll also be doing a Unity introduction and those kind of things. One thing to note, though, is that there is an assignment part that is going to be due for next week. So let's talk about that. So I'm just going to go down, skip down to assignments. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that available so you can see the first assignment part. Okay. So what are you building, and what the heck is this assignment anyway that I've got you to start already? And by the way, if you look at communication groups, you can see that I've put together as I call them, project groups, because there's basically two main projects you're building, project 1 and project 2, or assignment 1 and assignment 2. And right now I only have one set of groups. There are 20 groups. I will allow anywhere between 4 and 6 people to create a little project for yourself to create. So it's kind of like what we did last semester for COMP305, but I'll go as low as 4 people. So you can go like 4 people to make something that's pretty small. I don't expect to have too many roles, and I want to make this course as fun as possible. Okay, so that's what the idea is here. I don't want to make it so it's too crazy. One thing you can't do is do this thing on your own. So if you ask me to do something like, well, Tom, I don't work well with other people, I want to do this by myself, the answer is going to be no. So please don't ask. Okay, so it's going to be you and some team members. What I recommend is what I talked about last time is please pick your group members carefully, right? Because we don't want you to run into the situation where you're unhappy with your groups, and that would be bad. Now, we're going to keep these groups 1 through 20 for the first half of semester. If you're happy, we'll continue with them. If you're not, I'll just make another set of groups and you can rejoin a whole other group of people in the second half of semester to balance things off. We'll talk about it as we go on. Again, guys, I don't want to do a lot of heavy-handed administration here. It's really supposed to be for you to learn Unity 3D, do mobile, WebGL, all that kind of stuff. Now, we did WebGL last semester for those people who were with me with COMP305. We're going to do it again. So we're going to kind of explain how that works. We're going to export to, kind of to the web and all that stuff. So the tools and things that you practiced last semester will be useful this semester. We'll talk about that in a second, Ben. Let's look at that assignment for a second. So if I look at assignments, and if I look at the assignment 1, part 1, let's talk about assignment 1, part 1. Okay, so, and you can always download the document that's in assignment 1, part 1 right here. It also kind of is embedded in the document information here, but I want to talk about what you're going to be creating, right? Now, it's not like the project work that you did last time. And what I mean by that is, the last semester, and for people who were with me last semester, we did a big project, a semester-long project. This is not that, okay? So there is a little bit more leeway when it comes to the stuff that we're going to be producing this semester. Let me bring out the document and we'll talk about what the assignment is going to be. Again, bear with me. It says, this is the first part of a 3-part assignment using the Unity game engine and the C# programming language. You will work in a small group, 4 to 6 people, to create a 3D game with a single polished level. So that's why it's smaller in terms of scope. The game must include a menu screen, an option screen, and a game over screen. Okay, so those are the 3 things it needs. For this first project, your target platform will be WebGL. So you're going to be producing it on WebGL, not on PC. No functional logic is required for this part. So what you're doing for this part is getting to know Unity for the first part, and as well as Blender and a bunch of other things I'm going to give you. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be developing your game's concept, right? You're going to create an initial game design document. Again, you can assign a specialty role for this. For example, We talked about last semester how you could choose a designer, a producer, a lead software engineer, and so on. You could certainly go as structured as that. But remember, this course is going to be aligned with other people who've never done game development before. So please, when you combine with them, make sure you delegate some of that work so that it's not like you're doing everything. That's not the idea here, okay? What you're going to do is either create and or acquire assets, graphics and audio assets for the game. And you're doing one level. Again, these are the three things that you can do. These are the three types of games you can make. So to answer Ben's question, you can do a platform runner shooter, all right? So you're on a platform, a 3D platform, you can do that. You can do an isometric or a 3D tower defense game if you really want to. You can also do a sandbox crafting survival game, similar to Minecraft, but you're of your own making, right? So it can be Terraria, 3D, Minecraft 3D, or something else, Valheim, whatever. You can do it as complex as you want it to be. So this is your first project. And what you're going to be doing is each game will include the following common requirements. A character or a camera controller. So you may choose either a first-person or third-person character camera controller. This includes control of the character or camera with both mouse and keyboard and game controller. Remember, we're doing it first for WebGL, and then we're going to adapt this thing for mobile. Okay? Inventory system. This must include an appropriate user interface and related programming structure, and the feature must be activatable with player input. So in other words, I'm going to have some kind of inventory system where I keep track of stuff. Okay? Some kind of health system that you're going to have. You know what a health system is? A mini-map. We've done mini-maps last semester. We're going to do it again for 3D. Enemy AI. How does that work? So that's going to include things like pathfinding, line of sight behavior, a sensing radius, but in 3D, right? Pausing, saving, and loading is required for each of your games. That is required. Sound effects and music. That's required. Now, you don't have to do any of the coding behind this, as an example, for the first submission, which is going to be due next week. All right? Now, you may sound like that's crazy, but that is what you're doing. You're literally going to put together all the graphics and sound assets for next week, Friday. That's when it's all going to be due. Okay? So, for a platform runner shooter, these are the requirements that you need for next week. You're going to create at least 3 types of platforms: static, moving, ramps, elastic, spinning, swinging, whatever, if you're going to do the platformer running shooter, right? The player must be affected by physics. Long falls should kill the player. Okay, so just basic things. Hazards, create at least 3 types: spike pit, collapsing platform, or time flames. Now, none of this has to work, remember? This is just asset gathering for next week, which we'll talk about in a second. You must have a goal. Your game must include a goal to reach. This could be a door, elevation, tunnel, chest, or non-player character to save. So that is the stuff that you're going to be doing for your platform runner shooter. Your tower defense game, you'll have resource gathering, different tower types, and different enemy types. Okay? And your sandbox crafting survival game is going to have a single themed biome. So a small sandbox with 64 voxels, I recommend, per unit square recommended. I'm being asked if you can combine with other sections. Yes, you can, because I have one big section. So even though you are showing up today on Monday, you can always kind of come on Fridays as well, because I control both sections. Okay, so anything that's in my course, as long as I'm controlling the course, you're good to go. You can combine with other people if you wish, okay? From any section. It doesn't have to be just this one. So sandbox crafting game, just to complete it, is a single theme biome, day-night cycle, and a destructible environment. Those are the things that are required for the games. Those are things for each of the games, specific requirements or game type specific requirements that you'll need to put together for the semester. And hear me out when we talk about this. For your assignment deliverables, this is for part 1. So this version of your application will have the following characteristics: a menu screen, you need to have that, and it'll allow the user to get ready and displaying at least 4 options: new game, load game, options, or exit. Ensure you acquire or create UI elements that are appropriate for this screen. So you're making all the elements or acquiring them for this screen. Okay, so that's something to note. Okay, an option screen will display audio options, music volume, sound volume, control volumes. If you've done this already, awesome. And it'll also ask you for key mapping options. So for example, I want to kind of map different keys. Now this key mapping stuff will be different when it comes to mobile, because what we're going to have is you're going to support eventually two platforms. You're going to be supporting WebGL and mobile. Okay, that's what you're going to be doing. All right, a gameplay screen. This is where the main game occurs. Your 3D game will include one polished game level. For this assignment part, you will create only the UI elements. Place your player's avatar and enemies on the screen in a static pose, so no code. And for this assignment, you must include an appropriate skybox, lighting, and environment assets. All right, so basically what we're talking about here is you're just going to get assets and place them in the level. Okay, no movement or scripting is required for this first assignment because it's due next week, guys. Right? Really, it's you getting together with other students. Again, a minimum of 4 people, maximum of 6, to kind of start planning what your game is going to be like. Okay? A game over screen, so the game end state, and this will display the player's final score and give the player the option to play again, return to the main menu screen, and the screen can be mostly completed because really there's, what is it, just a bunch of buttons, and you might have a background and some music. So most of this is something that you can work on and get ready for next week. You're going to create a UI element that allows the player to go back to the gameplay screen, which is probably a button, and include an appropriate background graphic or tile map. Okay, because again, you can mix and match 2D because it's a menu, right? It doesn't have to be 3D all the time. And the player will control an avatar. This could be a vehicle, a character, a camera, whatever, because the game is going to be whatever you've chosen to create. The main input may be a combination of mouse and keyboard as well as a game controller if you wish. Player's avatar may have weapons or other devices, but doesn't have to. That can defeat the computer-controlled enemies, and you can select an appropriate avatar for your game and place it in the gameplay screen where it would normally start. Okay, so again, I don't need you to create a character controller right now. I just want you to get the assets. Okay, so remember, these are 3D assets. These are not 2D assets. And I'll give you some direction on where you can get this stuff. Your game must include an inventory system like we talked about before. You will develop the user interface for the inventory systems. Guys, there's plenty of work for everybody here. All right, so for people to get this stuff done, because you're doing user interfaces and all that stuff. Health system, again, you're going to get, this can include either health bars or visual elements for the player, enemies, or other environment props. You will acquire or create appropriate UI elements to support this feature in the gameplay screen. Okay, so you're actually going to do it, but there's no coding involved, right now. Minimap, get all your assets ready for your minimap. The game will include enemies and AI behavior, so get the enemies. Put them in the right places, is what this is basically saying. Your gameplay level must include a user interface that allows the player to pause the game, save, and load the game. So you need to have a user interface that allows you to do that in-game, right? Make it. And your game will include sound effects for collisions with enemies, collecting points, shooting attacks, explosions, blah, blah, blah. And your game will also include several game soundtracks, one for each screen. Acquire or create appropriate assets as you need, kind of to do this. So this is all common requirements. These are, everybody must do these. All your games are going to be the same in this case, right? Because those are just every game, right? But there are game type requirements to complete for this release. The previous stuff that I talked about earlier was like, what is your final state? So for example, if you look up above, it kind of describes what I'm looking for your final state for your platform runner shooter, tower defense, sandbox, crafting, survival game. But remember, there's no coding in this particular assignment part. So what you're doing is you're going to, if you're planning on doing a platform runner shooter, then it says acquire or create at least 3 platform types, static, moving, ramps, blah, blah. Build your level by placing these platforms in the appropriate locations. But again, remember, there's no coding required at this point, just static poses, hazards, and the goal. So get all the assets you require for your game by next week. That's what I'm really looking at, okay? And most of it, if you actually read through this document, it tells you the same thing. Your tower defense game, acquire or create appropriate resource assets for the game. Create appropriate UI elements to support this feature. But there's no coding, okay? And so Um, and then finally, your game design document. For those people who don't know, who've never done a game before, you need a game design document, which is like an external document that discusses how your game is going to be created. You need a title page with the company logo, the game name, author's name, and so on. I've provided you with a template that's online, and I will share that with you again. A table of contents, version history, game type, your mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics you've seen before, controls, level and UI sketches, which is your wireframes, screen captures for the initial version of your game, characters, vehicle, camera. All of this is due next week, Friday. All of it. Okay? And you might think I'm crazy, but the reason why I'm getting you to do it is if you gather all your assets together and do all your planning by next week, you're going to be set up so that way for the remainder of semester, you're going to just be iterating on the stuff that you've planned. All right. You need to share your stuff on GitHub to demonstrate best practices. Really, at this point, what you're doing is, there's nothing functional. You're just saving your assets and stuff on GitHub, and it requires a short video, right? And what you want to do, it says, and your partner. This really means and your partners. So you and your partners. No avatars allowed. You need one page, which is kind of, all of the students that are involved in your game, right? And you demonstrate your game's screens, the Unity editor. You'll describe the design for your game, and sound for your video must be an appropriate level. And the whole thing should take no more than 5 minutes because there is no code. A note about code for this semester, okay? And in general, please, I do not want you to read your code online. So I don't want you to kind of like literally read your code. So here's my line 37, and this is what's happening, and I'm doing a for loop. Please don't do that. It's more like, here's the feature that I've built. This is what we did to build it. Talk about data structures. Talk about kind of at a higher level how you got things done. One thing to note for this course. You don't have to create any original assets, but you do need to have your own assets for the game. So anything that I share with you in lab is not applicable, will not be allowed for you to add into your game. So if I share something in lab, as an example, like an asset that I create or something that, unless I say otherwise, unless I say something like, hey, you can use this asset. If I create something where I have an asset package that I download from Unity, you can't use that one. Just letting you know. I'm going to try and keep ones that are not so interesting, so they're not going to clash with you. Because it'd be kind of weird if I took a really cool, asset package that you were interested in using, and then you can't use it because I told you can't. And the reason why we're keeping it separate is because I want to keep the labs separate than the assignments. Labs are individual, assignments are group. All right, so really, what are you submitting? An external game design document of what your game is about, your game concept, which is really kind of similar to what you did with me and with Wallace's course, COMP397, where you first do your game concept, a working link to your project files on GitHub. So you're going to share your files on GitHub. Please, I don't want, if you're going to use GitLab or Bitbucket, that's okay, but it has to be a clickable link, okay? And your project files should be zipped, and that means no RAR. I will not accept RAR. Please do not also embed your links inside of a zip archive or a RAR, any kind of archive. Your links should be visible and clickable when you submit your assignment. The YouTube link called Hard Surface Modeling on eCentennial is not working. Okay, I'll fix that. You're going to have your short demo video that you're going to upload to eCentennial, and you're also going to indicate in your submission which Agile project management tool you will use to track your progress. In other words, Trello, Jira, whatever. Okay, because again, this is a continuation of what we've done in COMP305 for some of you, and for other people, you've done Trello or Jira with me in other courses, so you should know how to do those too. Now, there's a lot here, but this thing is only worth 5% of your final mark for this course, right? So that's why we've made it so that this is going to be multiple people, and it should be not difficult to do. I would partition or, kind of give everyone something to do from this, right? There's no coding involved, and even if you're going to change your assets later, the idea here is that you're prototyping at this point. You're putting together some assets for the concept of your game. So this week, when you meet with your team, my expectation is that you first form teams. I'm not going to form them for you. I'm not going to randomly assign you to teams. You pick your teams, okay? And again, you go on eCentennial, right? And you go into your communication groups folder. I think this is where it is, or course tools groups, and select a group to join. Okay, this is up to you to do. Okay, so please make sure you get this done. And when you join your group, I would allow up to 6 members, but I recommend even a small group as small as 4 is okay. All right. No group smaller than 4 will be accepted, however. So if you try and do this thing on your own, that would be bad. Gurkharat, that's one thing I have to also say, is that I cannot, I'm just letting you know, I cannot use Discord this semester. I've been asked not to do that, which kind of sucks. But I'm not going to be using Discord. It's going to be email and the course shell. We're going to communicate through the course shell and email this semester, and it's not up to me. It's kind of a political thing that we've been going through, so it's going to be no Discord this semester, unfortunately. I'd like to use Discord, but we're not doing it. All right, so that's what's happening. So again, please, when you have a chance, the first thing you should do is combine with somebody else, 3 other people, and join one of these groups. We're going to rename your groups, and we're going to use these groups when you do your final presentation at the end. Okay, so if you have a section, so some people are asking, what about if you have a person who is not in one of my sections, right? If you are not in one of my sections, then you cannot combine. If I'm doing section 1 and section 2 and there's a section 3, that section 3 has nothing to do with my sections. So please, the only time you can combine with other group members is if they're in my sections. Yes, Tatiana. Yeah, thank you for that question. They're the same. So there's only one set of groups for both sections. Yeah, that's fine. So if they're in the Friday section, then you can combine with them. They can join your group. Pick a group and tell them that they have the exact access you do. Because the Friday section and the Monday section are one big combined section. That means you can join with anybody from any group, okay? As long as they belong to me. All right, I'm not sure if there's other sections that are being taught this semester, but I think there are. Okay, so that's the first thing. So join your group, meet with your group this week, right? Select the game that you want to make, do your concept, and then next Monday, although your assignment 1 is not due, I will ask you to tell me what you're doing. Every group. Okay, that's what I want you to do. All right, now, what about in the case that, and this is something that I've got sometimes, people are like, I really hate groups. And the reason why I really hate groups is because whenever I do group work, then there's always somebody who doesn't do anything. What do we do with those people? Guys, if you're in a group and there's people that are not working out, right, you need to let me know as soon as possible. Please don't wait until the 3rd part of assignment 1 to let me know that this guy Tom is just not working out, okay? As an example, please don't do that. Get on it as soon as possible. If you know this week that the person that you're trying to contact that's part of your team is not responding to you, you let me know as soon as possible, right? Also, although there are no formal peer reviews this semester, there's no formal peer review system, I will give you a peer review to fill out for the your major submissions. In other words, not this one, because this is just concepting, but the next one, which is part 2. So if we go back to assignment 1, part 2, which is going to be due week 4, so that's only 3 short weeks from now, right? You will get a peer review, right, that you need to fill out, you and your group members, right? It will not be for marks, right? But as an example, if you say to me that guy Tom, right, is just not working out, it's going to be anonymous, right? So there's nothing for anyone to know, just you and me, right? If you say that guy Tom is not working out, he's not a good guy, he doesn't do what he's supposed to say or whatever, he said he's going to give us the stuff, but he hasn't delivered and blah, blah. His mark will be adjusted according to his peer review, okay? Even though there's not a formal peer review system. Make sense? So please make sure that you know that. It's coming up. It's going to come up for week 4. I'm going to do probably at least 3 peer reviews this semester. One of them is going to be for assignment 1, and 2 of them are going to be for assignment 2 that you're going to see coming up. All right, so it will affect your marks at the end. So please make sure if you're not happy with your group members, remember this is your course. I want you guys all to have a good time with it, but you all should work too. I think we can ask people who to be combined by chatting in here as well, right? Since everyone is here, I think so. Yeah. Due dates are the same for all sections. Absolutely. Yeah, it's all the same. Because I'm gonna be releasing my the video on Mondays. That means section on Friday is basically me getting together with them and saying, okay, so have you chosen your group members? Because my expectation is that you're gonna have the video late Monday, just like the first section that we're dealing with on Monday. So it doesn't really matter whether you're on the Friday section or the Monday section. The due date's the same. Okay. So that's the other thing is, Himali, if you wanted to attend either the Monday section or the Friday section, anyone here you're always able to attend any section you want because they're both mine. So if you felt that 1 week you could use this time better with your team and get together with me on Friday for that meeting, I'm okay. As long as you get together with me once a week live, you're going to be able to complete your lab and it'll be nice and easy for you to do. If you don't get together with me and I don't see you at all, that would be very bad. Okay, so that's what's coming up. Notice that there are labs every single week. Lab 1, Lab 2, Lab 3, Lab 4, and so on. They're each worth 2%. The first lab this week is the easiest lab, okay, because we're going to just do setup, downloading, and we're going to put up something on GitHub. So it's pretty simple, and it's kind of like 3 marks, okay? That's what we're doing this week. So, all right, so I'm seeing some comments. I'm just going back on YouTube. I see that there are people who are watching on YouTube. Awesome, great. And again, if it's going to work better for you on YouTube and you're watching at the same time and you're getting, closed captioning and that's working for you because it makes better sense for you for your language of choice, that's fine with me. Whatever makes sense for you, okay? Or if it's just in English and I'm speaking too quickly and it's just easier for you to watch on YouTube, that's fine too. As long as you get everything done, it doesn't matter to me. Although I'd like to have interaction with you as much as possible. All right, so that's really the what you're doing so far. The first part, your assignment 1, part 1, again, it's released today, due next week on Friday. That's when it's due. And it's really what it is just your game concept and all of your assets put into place as much as possible for all the parts, depending on the game that you're going to make. So first course of action today is group forming. Make sure you get together with somebody, at least 3 other somebodies, and, kind of join a group. And you can do that again online. So again, you go on communication, or I think it's course tools for you, and then you can see a group. And let's see if there's anybody that's done that yet. Yay, look at that. We have a group of 5 already. That's awesome, guys. Some people are listening. And another group of 5. That's really great. Guys, if you're not comfortable in a group and by accident you've joined a group that you don't want to be part of, as an example, please let me know and I'll remove you. You cannot remove yourself from a group. You can only join a group. Also, if I see groups of 2 like this and that's all you have at the end, by next week on Monday when I see you, I will disband this group of 2 and I will randomly put you with another group of 2 to make you a group of 4. Okay, just letting you know. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to place you randomly in groups. So please endeavor to choose your own group members that you like to work with, people that work well with you. Please don't choose people that don't work well, okay? Otherwise, that doesn't make any sense to me. And don't randomly choose people either. Don't randomly join a group because you could do that, but that would just be like, they're going to ask me to remove you, okay? Most likely. I don't know who this Tom guy is. Get him out of my group, okay? Right? It's going to happen. So that's the first course of action. Any questions around the assignment? Any thoughts? What do you guys want to make? This is your time to kind of have interaction. Does anyone have a thought on what they feel like doing yet? It's okay. You can always come on the mic, guys. You know, it's not going to be unsafe for you to do so. Or you can put it in chat if that makes you feel more comfortable. Which group is that? Sorry, I've got a communication that says, okay. Thank you. I'm just going to pull this off screen so I can do it off screen. So again, if you accidentally joined a group, I can always remove you if you let me know, right? And I'll try and do that as soon as possible. Okay, we're going to get on to the more interesting parts now as we talk about the Unity version you'll be using and so on. All right, so for this course, I've had to choose a version of Unity that makes sense. And like every semester, I'm going to ask you to stick with the same version of Unity for the entire time. Okay, so this semester, we are downloading and installing Unity version 2021.2. So 2021.2.7F1. And that is for everybody, please. Sorry, I just kind of said one person, but I'll do that for everybody. So that is the version that I want you to download, this one. Okay? So please download and install that version. But if for those people who don't know, right, what Unity is, I know that some people are new to Unity. So this is the part, guys, where for people who've already done game programming as well as intro to game and simulation, please bear with me as we kind of navigate with other people. So what is Unity? For those people who don't know, Unity is what's called a game engine. And what it is think about this as a tool to make games. That's simplest in its simplest form. Unity uses the C# scripting language. Notice I didn't say programming language. C# for scripting, right, to create all of its interactions for game development, right? So that's what we're going to use. The way you get started is you click Get Started. So this is, again, you go to unity.com. There's unity.com. And then what you want to do is you want to click on Get Started. And you definitely don't need to pay anything. So if you're in this screen and you decide to download Plus or Pro or, I don't know, and pay money, don't do that. You can click on Individual, and there are two options, really. There are Student and Personal. If you are a student, you can subscribe to being a student. You can sign up. Again, it tells you the eligibility criteria. The only difference really between Student and Personal is that you get 5 seats of Unity Teams Advanced for free, which is pretty cool. If you're going to do Unity Teams Advanced. If you're not, we may not do that this semester, then using Personal is just fine, all right? So if I click on Get Started here on Personal, it'll take me to this screen right here, which allows me to download the Unity Hub. Unity Hub is available for both Windows, Mac, and Linux. Some people have asked me earlier today, can I use my Mac instead of using a PC? Yes, you can. However, I caution you, if you're working with other people who are using a PC and you have a Mac version of your files, you need to install both the Mac and PC platform on your machine. Or else, when it comes to producing your files or doing things with Unity, with working with somebody else, it can be somewhat complex. So I recommend, if you've got access to a Windows machine, which most of us are using, instead of using Mac, which you could use if you really need to, I recommend you use a PC instead. Most games, by the way, are made for PC. They're not made for Mac. There are some games now, especially with Apple Arcade, that are being made for Mac, and they're being made with Unity, a lot of them. All right, so that's one thing that we want to think about. There are different kinds of Unity hubs you can download. The latest version is Unity Hub version 3, which is what I'm using here. So if previously you've downloaded and installed a version of Unity that uses Unity Hub 3 beta, notice that mine is officially now Unity Hub 3, which is the dark version. If I go to the little preferences menu, and if I go to advanced, notice I'm using the beta channel, and you can also use the production channel if you so wish. However, I recommend the beta is probably just as good, if not better, in terms of content than the standard channel. Okay, so that's the one that you're going to download. You can always switch. Once you download Unity Hub, you can switch from the standard channel to the beta channel. what Unity Hub will allow you to do is select your installation. So if you download Unity Hub, that's the first step, and it says that, Unity Hub download. Then what you want to do is you can choose the version of Unity that you want to install. And when you click on installs, right, as an example, I've installed Unity version 2021.2.7F1 as of this recording. For this semester, all Unity courses that I teach this semester will be done with this version. I'm not going to shift. We're not going to upgrade. Doesn't matter how many new versions of Unity they come up with. Why is that? Because really at the end of the day here, 2022 is not quite ready for production, right? So if I click on install editor here, you can see that 2022 is not even an option, right? As an official release. It is available in pre-release form, but I highly don't recommend that because it's still in beta, right? So we don't want to use a beta if possible when we're building stuff. Using the Unity Hub as beta, that's okay because that's just basically how we connect to Unity, but using a beta version of an editor, I don't recommend. I rather recommend that you use something like 2021. There is also other versions that are listed here, and they are the LTS versions, long-term support versions, but we're not going to use these. We're going to use 2021.2.7F1. Any questions or concerns around using this version? And if you ask me something like, hey, Tom, I've got 2020 dot blah, blah, the answer is it's not the right version. No, you can't use the previous version. No, you can't use the other version. This is the version that I'm going to support. Only this one. And all your team members should have the exact same version as you. Okay, please don't try and, wait till next week or whatever. What about if this version is not available next week? Let's say for whatever reason you didn't install it today because you don't have your machine or whatever. You can always go to your archive. And if you go to your archive, you can go to download archive. And on your download archive, you will see every version of Unity from version 5 or 3. Here it is. So notice that there is 2021.2.7. This was released December 16th. Guess what? There's going to be a new version probably out tomorrow, right? But who cares? We're going to use this one. But that was kind of the latest version of 2021.2. Okay, but let's suppose that you go online and you don't see this version available in Unity Hub because you installed it tomorrow or Friday. That's okay. You can always go to the Unity archive, which is this. I'll give you the link. All right, here's the link for it. And you can download any version of Unity you want, especially if you're working for a company and they ask you to, they have a project in Unity that they want you to work with, and it's not the version you're using now. It's a previous version because they have compatibility issues, and they want you to use a specific version of Unity. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's the version of Unity I want you to download. Now, the options, when you download Unity, there's some stuff you need to add, right? Modules. The modules that I recommend for this course, so you don't have to do it again, are Windows, WebGL, and Android. Those three. And if I look at the modules, you can see for Android, I've installed the Android SDK and NDK tools. That's been installed. The OpenJDK, right, as well as Android build support. You can see that it's a hefty package size, okay? Actually, if you think about this, right, as an example, I've got probably around 18 gigs of installables that are installed for this release for me, right? Microsoft Visual Studio Community 2019, it's already been installed. You don't have to do anything there. Chances are you already have that. We'll talk about that in a bit. Universal Windows Platform I installed because I do other work with Xbox and so on, but you don't need it. WebGL build support you do need. That's 1.35 gigabytes. And Windows build support IL2 CPP, right? 1.66 gigabytes. So you need these two pieces for sure. If you're running a Mac and you really are desperate, interested in running a Mac, then you could certainly run Mac build support for another 1.74 gigs. But please also install Windows build support so you're compatible with your peers. It's actually this one. So, wait, how? I kind of said it's this one. This one here. This is the one that you need to download. Okay, 2021.2.7F1. All right, so that is the The modules you have to include, you don't need documentation. I've included them here for me, but you don't need them because most of the time the Unity documentation is great online. All right, so that is your Unity install. Guys, it will take you some time to download this thing, okay? At the end of the day, this could take you as long as half an hour or more. Just to give you a sense of it, if I'm a little bit faster or if I'm a little bit slower than you, my system specs are a little bit older. I've got an i9 10900K, right? That's what it is, right? From a couple of kind of iterations ago. Couple of generations. I'm a Intel person, not an AMD person. That's just a choice, right? I've got 64 gigs of RAM and a RTX 3070 card, right? So if my system is a little faster or slower, those are my specs. Do you need the specs like that? No, you don't. Okay. In fact, you can run, kind of Unity with not a chunky machine. It's pretty good. If we were running Unreal together, that's a different story altogether. Unreal requires a bit more of a powerhouse than Unity does. Okay, so let's continue. So that is your install. So again, will you be able to do it now while we're talking? Chances are no, right? But please follow along with the rest of the stuff as much as you can. So that is your Unity install. And we're going to be using Unity to build out our game this semester, right? So all the games, all the examples that we're going to be doing together, we're going to be doing with Unity. All right, so game development, for those people who've never done it before, is a complex process. And what I mean by that is, it's probably the hardest thing that you can do in software engineering, okay? Now, you notice all these little things that are stated inside of the outline, and it looks like there's, different piece parts to everything. And, well, the reason why it's so complex is because it uses creative arts, right? So we need to get assets to use. We need to have, especially if you're using things like, if I'm building a building or a 3D object in, kind of in a virtual environment or whatever, it can be quite complex. You need to understand things about three-dimensional, 3D in general, 3D environments. You have to understand how to navigate in 3D. You need to understand the difference between 3D and 2D, different kinds of cameras and perspectives. We're going to be talking about all about this, so none of it's required for you to know before coming into this course. So let's suppose you're one of these people that have always had these holes in your knowledge before you came into this course, and you're like, I wish I knew more about 3D. We learned about it, but I haven't used it, and I don't know about it. You're going to be fine in this course, right? Or maybe you're just coming into this course because you're interested in game development, but you're really primarily interested in software engineering, and just game development was kind of an interesting elective that you want to take. This course is also for you because you don't need to know a lot about game dev. I'm going to show you or talk about all the pieces that you need for this semester, okay? So don't worry, but that is the tool, that is the main tool we're using. The other tool we're using this semester is Visual Studio, okay? So please, if you don't have access to Visual Studio for whatever reason, and all of you should because you're all software engineers, this is the version of Visual Studio I'm using, Visual Studio 2019. Okay, so please make sure you download and install at least the community version of Visual Studio 2019. And this is going back to that question I had about the Mac. If you're using a Mac, can you use Visual Studio 2019 on the Mac? The answer is no. They have other things on the Mac. They have Xcode, which you could totally use if you really needed to. I don't recommend it. And you can also use Visual Studio Code, which is like an editor, a code editor, which isn't bad. Some people prefer to use Visual Studio Code anyway, even on a PC. So it is possible for you to completely code and run things on a Mac and Unity. Not a problem at all. Okay. So just to let you know, so that is kind of like Visual Studio. One thing to note when I use Visual Studio, and you'll notice this, is I also use something called ReSharper. So, and I've talked about this with some of you in past, kind of sessions together. And if you look at, there is an outfit called JetBrains, right? There's a company called JetBrains, and JetBrains is a tools company, and they've created things like Android Studio. They also have a tool, if I go to developer tools, called ReSharper C++ and ReSharper Ultimate, right? So obviously, ReSharper is similar to Visual Assist. So there's another company that they make. Ubisoft recommends something like Visual Assist, which actually helps you code better, right? So Visual Assist is the other option that you can use. Again, Visual Assist is proprietary and costs money. I'm not sure that there is an educational version that you can use, but there is an educational version that you can use for JetBrains ReSharper. In fact, what I'd ask you to do is get an educational account. If you look up JetBrains education, if I look that up, you can see that there are free educational licenses for JetBrains. I'm going to copy this and put that into your chat. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, please sign up for JetBrains. What this will do for you is it'll allow you to install an extension in Visual Studio that'll give you code hinting in Visual Studio for both C# and C++. Again, we probably won't need C++ for this course, but just putting it out there. All right, so that's JetBrains. That's the download. We're talking about downloads and orientation and installation right now anyway, so this is kind of the stuff you need. All right, so are you all with me? So check mark if you're with me, X if you're very far away and you're lost and you don't know what to do. Yay, I got some people responding with a check mark. I'm going to be using the reactions on Zoom to make sure you guys are alive and you guys are with me. I know this is kind of funny, but you know, it's hard for a professor when all we see is black screens. We don't see a lot of people, right? So bear with me when I ask those questions. It's just a checkpoint to make sure you guys are all together. Thank you for that feedback. All right, so yeah, so we've got, you know, JetBrains. We're going to install that with Visual Studio. That is kind of required as part of Unity. You can see that that was part of the Unity install anyway. If you don't have it, it'll install it for you. Okay. The other installation I'd like you to put together as well is, sorry, I'm getting another message. If all you've got is Mac OS, then you can certainly use Mac. Windows build support. You can also use Mac build support. So if you go here, if you're a Mac person, you have no choice, then you can certainly download and install Mac build support. You need to do this for your Mac or else it won't work. Okay. But you need Mac build support and WebGL, those two things. Now, mostly you're going to be doing WebGL anyway, so it should be okay with you. But those two things for sure, as well as Android. Please make sure you install Android build support. The NDK takes up the most time. Okay, just letting you know. Okay, so that is your installation that you need to make for those. The other piece that I'm going to be using, because we're going to be using Git and GitHub, is I'm going to be using something called Gitkraken. So we've talked about this as well, but I'll be using Gitkraken. Okay, Gitkraken is the tool of choice for me for people who are, instead of using command line, I think it's a good tool to use with Unity. It's visual, right, which is pretty cool. And if we look at the overview for Gitkraken, it's pretty cool because it allows you to see visually each of your commits, and you can download Gitkraken for free. So please download Gitkraken. So again, if I was to download this and it's here, I'm just going to go down to this thing right here, this link. And let's, this is the link for Gitkraken. And for those people online, I haven't forgotten you. Please download Gitkraken. All right, so I'm using Gitkraken for a reason, because we want to keep track of version control. And for most of us, we've been using version control. Okay, here's something to note. Is there anybody that does not have, at this point in the game, a GitHub account? If you don't have a GitHub account, please put an X, right, on your, as a reaction. If you do not have a GitHub account. Most of you now should. Okay? If you don't have a GitHub account, then you need to get one. And again, the way to get that is, I'm just going to go into incognito mode here for a second to show you what that looks like. If I go to incognito mode, so I look like a brand new user on GitHub, otherwise it'll detect me. And if I go to github.com, right, so that's this, then you sign up with GitHub here. right? Again, GitHub is a cloud service that we'll be using this semester. And the way it works, remember, for GitHub, and again, this is just a bit of a review, is imagine if I have some files. So these are your Unity files right here. And I have, or this is your folder, let's say, and I have a bunch of files that I have. I'll make some stuff that's angled differently too, just cause to make it more interesting. And I have all these files locally. These are my local files. And what happens if your computer burns? Well, then you lose all your files. And especially when it comes to Unity, Unity does not have a GitHub compatible extension that you can use. The right way to use Unity with GitHub is to turn Unity off. So basically save your scene, save your project, close Unity, and then transport your local files through Git and GitHub, right, or to GitHub from your local computer. So again, if we were going to draw, a funny cloud, let's suppose this is the GitHub cloud with my terrible drawing. I'm just using this thing right here. Here we go. Here's the GitHub cloud. And I want to transport these local files here. Then it's not the same as using, Google Drive. It's not like I can, copy paste into Google Drive or GitHub like I do in Google Drive. It's not like that at all. In fact, what I'm doing is I'm cloning my files and folders on GitHub. It's a repository. It's not a cloud drive. It's different altogether. So this is a remote repository, a remote repo is what we like to call it, right? And the way to connect to the remote repo is you need to issue commands in the background. You can do it through command line. That's a lot of work. For some of you, it's even kind of scary. Or you can do it through a tool like Gitkraken. So if you do it through a tool, all we need to do is we need to connect from our local files to our remote repo through something called a remote. And that remote is just a connection that's stateless. And what that means is that it doesn't have a synchronous connection. It's not just something that's always on. It only kind of checks if these two things are in sync when you want to push something. So that's one of the commands. So the push command, which is like an upload, right, in the cloud direction. That's what this is. So we want to do a push, right? Or we can always do a pull, right? So a pull is a download in the direction of your local file. So there's the push, or it can do a pull. Again, this is just some review, which is like a download, right? Not quite a download, but it is kind of like a download. And it goes in the opposite direction. It goes in the direction of your files, right? And I know you guys know what downloading is because we do it all the time. It's part of our culture now. But the reason why I'm saying it's like a download and like an upload is because it's not exactly that, okay? It's what we're doing is we're synchronizing upstream and we're synchronizing downstream. That's what kind of like we're doing more of with the repo. The reason why we want to use GitHub, which is a cloud service, right, is because it allows us to decouple our files from our computer. Our computer is not required. Once I've uploaded to GitHub, I can work on any computer. And if something happens to my environment, it doesn't matter. I can go to another environment and I can continue working. And this is a safeguard. That's one of the reasons. So one of the reasons why we use GitHub is for backup. There's 3 reasons, right? Reason 1 is for backup. And reason 2, other than backup, right, is version control. We don't want to, version things on our own. That is a terrible thing for us to do. If I start versioning and say, okay, this is like, my assignment 1, part 1, version 1, version 2, version 3, and I do it manually on my own in something like, Google Drive, that's terrible. What do I know? What's the difference between version 1 and version 2? Do I know? No, the answer is I don't know. But with version control, I do know because I can mark my commits with some information. And the third reason for GitHub, Git and GitHub or version control itself is collaboration. You want to work with somebody else, right? So you collaborate with somebody else and you work with that person, right? And those are the 3 reasons to use GitHub, Git and GitHub. So top 3 reasons to use Git and GitHub. So if I was ever going to ask you this on a test, quiz, or whatever, there's your answer. Okay. Ben's asking, is Writer better for C# compared to Visual Studio? I don't think so. I still think Writer's pretty cool, but I recommend using Visual Studio. I still think Visual Studio is better. Is Writer better than Visual Studio Code? Maybe. But even Visual Studio Code is pretty awesome when it comes to supporting Unity, right? So I think, I would stick with Visual Studio if I were you, and it's going to be one tool instead of two because you're probably using Visual Studio for other things as well. All right, so again, this is kind of what we want to do. The remote usually has a name. Usually the remote is called Origin, the Origin remote, right? And that Origin remote is, you can call it whatever you like, but it's just a information, almost like an IP address or a URL, usually called a URI, of what this remote repository is, okay? When we're sharing files together, okay, example, you're doing your labs, or when you're doing your assignments, you need to make your repositories private, okay? Please don't make your repositories public. There's two access levels right now for you. You can make them either private, right, where you need to invite me, right? And the way where you invite me is at Tsiliopoulos@hotmail.com, please. Okay, that's where you invite me. Please do not invite my other persona, which is tom.Tsiliopoulos. That is a different account that I use for business. You could also make it public. Public is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it public for you so you can share my code and examples. Anything I share with you is usually fair game, okay? Which means if I share something with you, an example of something that I'm doing, you can definitely include that or incorporate that into your assignments. No problem. That's why we do the labs in the first place. The labs are to help you build capability for your assignments. They're not meant to say, hey, this is me, and you can't do my stuff. Sometimes you can't use my assets. You want to try them out on your own assets. That's part of the lab, right? But the code itself, a lot of times I'll share with you, and you can use anything I share with you. Okay, so that's what I want you to do. So when you share with me, it's my last name at hotmail.com. That's what you're going to share with me. And then I'll have access to that, that as well. Okay. If in doubt, invite both of me. Invite tom.Tsiliopoulos and Tsiliopoulos. But really, I only need you to do it once. Okay. And that's private if you want to make private repositories. So those are the two access levels, private or public. When we're using WebGL, right, and when we're using Unity, there is something called a gitignore file that we're going to use. The gitignore file is basically going to ignore certain files in our folder, okay? And the main one we want to ignore the library folder. The library folder comes with all Unity installations, okay? And the library folder is huge. It could include 20,000 files, okay? We don't want you to upload 20,000 files to GitHub. That doesn't make any sense. And a lot of those files are files that you can just download when you start Unity again. So our gitignore file basically shows which folders or files we want to ignore before we put them up on GitHub. We need to use this. Also, if you want to include some folders that are empty because you want to maintain a file structure, you can use a .gitkeep file. A .gitkeep file, if you place it inside of a folder, let's suppose there's a folder that's empty, if you place it in there, it will retain the folder structure. Otherwise, if you upload or push an empty folder to the remote repository, it will ignore that folder and you will not have it upstream. Why am I telling you this? Because if you're working with somebody else and you want them to put something in a certain folder that doesn't exist, well then you need to put something in there, right? Otherwise, GitHub will ignore it. So that's kind of the way we do it. We create commits for GitHub. Remember, one commit, the rule is, and here's the golden rule for GitHub, right, is just to let you know, Git in GitHub, actually, what we should say is one commit for at least for every function or feature, right, at least. And I'm going to say at least because a lot of times there's way more than one commit for feature, but at least one for every feature you add, right? And at least one commit, right, for every bug. Okay, that's what I want. If you don't have at least these, you don't have enough commits, right? That means you've committed more than one, you've added more than one feature at the same time. And this could also include things like one new asset, or whatever. But I would stick with features, all right? All right, so that's the kind of the golden rule. Make sense? I know some of you haven't had these restrictions before because your professors in the past have said just push things to GitHub and give me your repository. But the point here is that you're showing your progression as you're putting things together with Git and GitHub. All right, let's continue. So now that I'm going through the process. You put it up on Git and GitHub. You need to track your progress. And last semester, for some of you used a tracking tool for your project, right? We're going to be using agile methodology for the most part, but I'm not going to be strict with this semester because it's not the exercise. This exercise this semester is learning 3D, GitHub 3D, Unity 3D, and mobile development, right? So agile methodologies and agile development, project management is really a ancillary learning for you guys, right? So really you can use two tools. You can use something called Trello, right, as an option for your projects. And Trello, obviously I have a space here. Let's just go into that thing like we did before. Trello is kind of a tool to keep track of your project. So there's Trello.com. You can sign up for free. Now, note that it is made by an outfit, if you scroll all the way down, called Atlassian, right? Same people who make Bitbucket, as an example, and the same people who make Jira. So if I go to Jira, and if I go to the official site, you can see as well that Atlassian makes Jira as well. So what the heck? How does Atlassian own both Jira and Trello, and why would I choose one over the other one, right? Well, my friends, and I've talked to you guys about this before, Jira is the de facto standard for project management now for software engineering, okay? And Trello is the little brother or little sister of Jira. If you've got a small project and it's not complex, then Trello is okay. Both Jira and Trello a lot of times use something called a Kanban board or a project board, where you have different states for your project, right? Again, you might have a bunch of to-dos that are inside of a backlog, some kind of doing or in progress, some kind of testing state, and each of these columns can have different cards. Each card is a feature, right, that you're going to drag along from one column to the other to show progress in your project, okay? Again, I'm not doing an agile project management course, but I'll be asking for you to submit either some kind of tracking, whether you're using Trello or Jira. Excel is not acceptable. Neither is Google Drive or some other form of tracking. You need to use a tool. Choose one, Trello or Jira. That's it. No other tool this time around, okay? So that's for you and for your project teams, please. I recommend Jira because I think it's great to put on your resume, but it has a bit more of a learning curve than Trello, okay? Questions around Trello or Jira? Again, these are things you can start working on for you and your team. Okay, so pretty cool. We've got a way of putting things up. I've talked about you using Gitkraken. The way Gitkraken works is it gives you, like I said, a visual way of connecting to, GitHub, right? And it doesn't require console commands, but you could certainly do things with console commands. And later on this course, maybe we will, just because sometimes we can solve problems with console commands that we cannot do with a tool like Gitkraken, okay? Although Gitkraken has a console now too, which is pretty cool. All right, so that is, those are the tools that I want you to download. If you wanted to make console commands available for you, right, to use. If you're using a Mac, it's built in. The terminal has a built-in Git command that you can use. However, if you're using Windows, you need to download them from the Git and Git locally from git-scm.com. All right, so this is the download for Windows machines if you want to use console commands. Ben says, thoughts on Gitkraken boards? That's like glow boards. Or is it for sure only Trello or Jira? I mean, I'm okay, Ben. If you wanted to use Gitkraken glow boards, I guess I'm okay with that too. I was just trying to cut it down so that you wouldn't have too many tools, right? But if you really love, Gitkraken boards, okay, fine. But Josh is asking only Trello or Jira. Yeah, because what are you going to use, Josh? Are you going to use GitHub projects? It's not really that great. Yeah, whatever you want. I mean, I think, Ben, that the best thing for you, in my opinion, I think the best thing for your resume is Jira. So I'm trying to build up your resume too, right? So that way, when you go and do an internship or you do something else, that's why. So it's good to learn. There's some great videos and it's free to use, right? So both are free to use. It just takes a little bit more learning from it. You got to kind of spend your own time doing learning how to use Jira. All right. Any questions around version control, why we need it, or anything else we've talked about? By the way, I've tried to slow things down to give you a chance to download and install 2021.2.7F1. Is anyone done by any chance? Check mark if you're done. I want to kind of understand how we're doing with that, because you should be downloading it by now. I got a couple people done, right? Kirk Corrett says you have to require a restart. Well, we're going to take a short break in another half an hour or so, because remember this class lasts for 3 hours. So I usually break in the middle, right? Just to have a bit of a breather, bathroom break, coffee, whatever we have to do, and come back. Okay. All right. So thank you for that feedback. So a few people have done it, but I recommend you should get cracking on it. No pun intended. Get cracking. Because we're going to start doing some examples of this in the second half. So what's the module we'll need to install again? Ethan's asking. Are you talking about for Unity, Ethan? Yeah, so again, you need to install version 2021.2.7F1, and the modules you need are, you need Android support, Android build support, Android SDK and NDK tools, and OpenJDK. You need these three. You also need, if you're a non-Mac person, WebGL build support and Windows build support. Yes, we do. Imali is asking, do we need Blender for this subject? And we do. And we'll talk about which version in a second. That's the next install we're going to do before we go. All right, so let's talk about Blender now. So what is Blender? And we're talking about tools today. And if you go to blender.org, there is a 3D modeling tool that we're going to be using for this course. So Blender has updated. It's an amazing tool and it's free. Okay. And if you've never used Blender before, again, I think it's a great tool to learn. You can use it from everything from 3D modeling to 3D printing. If you really want to. Some people use it also for organic modeling. We'll be primarily using it for hard surface modeling. Okay. The reason why we use Blender for hard surface modeling is it can do organic modeling, but there are better tools out there right now that can do it easier. That's all. Not because it's not able to, you can't do it in Blender. You can do everything in Blender. If I click on download Blender, you can see that the latest version of Blender is 3.0. This is an update from the recent list. And the problem with 3.0 is the latest version of Unity, 2021.2.7F1, the one I wanted you to download, unfortunately, it's not drag and drop. We have to export it as a FBX file, which is not a big deal, but I'm just showing you that that's the one thing. Blender is an amazing program that you can run. A lot of times, what I find is when I'm running Blender, I want to run Blender in admin mode. I find that when I run Blender, if I go to Blender, here's Blender, there we go. And I want to run this as an administrator. And I find that running it as an administrator, it just opens quicker. Okay, there's Blender 3. Okay, so this is what I'm going to be using for this semester. Let me just pin this to the taskbar for us, somewhere down in here. There we go. So Blender 3. So Blender is a 3D modeling environment, okay, which works nicely with Unity. Okay, it works great. So if I want to create simple 3D environments or tiles, 3D tiles, I can do so on Blender. We'll do that first little bit today, just to brush up on Blender and how it all works, okay? So this is Blender. You can see that in a 3D environment, what Blender gives us is a workspace, a scene. This is the scene. And it gives us on the top right corner, kind of similar to a hierarchy, right? That's what this is up here on the top right corner. But really it's an outliner. That's what they call it. And on the bottom right, you can see a properties panel, which kind of shows us all the properties that we're going to be using for all the objects in the scene. Okay, similar to what we do in Unity. Okay, so this is Blender. The thing with Blender is we need to export from Blender to Unity. At one point, you could just simply drag and drop, like the whole blend file. Nowadays, until Unity updates, until Unity has an update, I believe 2022 will support Blender 3. But right now, you got to export it. And you go to File, Export, and you can do an Export FBX, a film box, right? Which is right here. I was skipping over it. When you export an FBX file, you can do that, and it'll go right into Unity, and it'll work great. Okay, so we'll talk about how to do this. So this is another tool to download for you for this semester, Blender. We're going to be using this for hard surface modeling, and we're going to start today. Okay? And it's going to be a bit of a review. One thing that we're going to be doing with Blender is talking about 3D spaces, as well as perspective versus isometric view. What's the difference? Okay, so we're going to be doing that, and that's going to be in your lab today. Okay, so that's Blender. I'm going to keep Blender open in the background just because we're going to get back to it. So that's the other install. When it comes to 3D organic modeling, if you're someone who's interested in doing that, and again, it's outside the scope of this course to do 3D organic modeling, I probably wouldn't use Blender. There's some great tools out there that we use. One of them is called ZBrush, right? However, it's not free. So if I was to look at Pixelogic's ZBrush, and again, it's called ZBrush, not ZBrush, for whatever reason, you can see the type of models that it can create. It can create a very organic looking set of models, all right? You can see what it does. So very, very cool. And what it does is it uses something called voxel sculpting to create these models, which is a very different workflow, as an example, than using hard surface modeling. ZBrush is probably a standard in the industry, but there's some other tools that are really great as well. One of them is called 3D Coat. All right, so 3D Coat is another great tool you can use, and it's not anywhere near as expensive as ZBrush. It also does both hard surface modeling and organic modeling, but a lot of times I will use it for organic modeling because it's just a lot easier to use. There's some great tutorials on using 3D Coat, and you can buy it right through Steam if you're interested. So if you actually go to Steam, let's go there. And if I was going to look at, the store for a second, I'll bring it up for 3D Coat. Here's your 3D Coat on Steam, right? And you can see that the costs, is that 3D Coat? No, 3D Coat. Oh, wow. They've removed it, right? 3D Coat was a demo, but they used to have it on Steam. That's unfortunate. But you could buy it on Steam. It was like $80. So that's kind of new. But the great thing about this is that if you already own, which I do, 3D Coat by Pilgway, these guys make a great app as an example. And 3D Coat is amazing because, again, you can do organic modeling with it. So really awesome. There is an academic program, which means you can get 3D Coat a lot of times as a 30-day trial, as an example, or a for academic purposes, you can use this as well. And it's a really great way of learning how to do 3D voxel sculpting as opposed to using things like Blender. Blender can do it too, but there's just a longer process to do. But we're going to avoid doing any of this organic modeling. And instead, we're going to use something called Mixamo instead. Okay, so 3D Code is great, but Mixamo is going to make our life a lot easier. And so please go now to mixamo.com. Here's Mixamo. And I'm just going to copy paste. This is owned by Adobe, right? So Adobe owns Mixamo. And what we're going to do with Mixamo is download models from Mixamo, and we're going to use them. Now, I have an Adobe account, but you don't need one. You can sign up for free, right? You can sign up for free. Sure. And when you sign up for free, what you do is when you go to Adobe, you can select a character model, which we're going to be using this semester, right? So again, let's suppose I want to select this guy right here, or let's say we want to select another model like Exo Gray. Let's use that character. You notice what this model has, right? This model is actually being shown in WebGL, which is kind of neat, up on Mixamo, right? It is a 3D model. Now, it's been created by using voxel sculpting, as well as retopologizing the voxels into quads. That's what it's done. And it creates a 3D model that we can use. All 3D models, which we're going to be talking about later on this semester, have something called a, basically a skeleton that's inside of them. I'm trying to, talk about it in another way. And this skeleton, if you will, right, allows us to deform each of the quads and the vertices, so that when I move the skeleton, right, as an example, then it actually deforms the object itself. So that's what the 3D model does. This 3D model is just that. So you can see it starts off in something called T-pose, which we're going to be talking about. And then what we can do is we can apply an animation. So one thing we're going to be doing is getting a model like this and say, let's say I want to do some kind of idle animation. I can search for the animation that I want. So I can say something, I want to do an idle animation, right? And let's try that again. And here is idle animation for my character. So I can take that, kind of model, and I can apply a motion capture animation to it. So again, it has a rig inside of it. It's rigged up, right? So it has bones and so on, right? And this armature, is that's what it's called, that's inside of the 3D mesh, right, is connected to an animation sequence, right, where each of the vertices is animated according to a performance capture that's been done, kind of in a studio. And so Adobe has allowed us to use this royalty-free for prototyping purposes. Okay, so that's what we can do. You don't have to subscribe to it. I can apply any one of these animations to the model. For example, let's say I want to make this guy fight, or stand and fight, stand ready to fight. I can make him punch, right, by typing in that kind of animation, right? So you can punch, right? And you can speed it up too. If you don't like that, you can make it faster, right? Or you can make it so it's a kind of a cross punch. You can make that faster, right? Right? And then after you're happy with the animation, you can download it to your favorite program. Notice where it can go. It can go to an FBX, which is a film box export. We're going to do this later on. It's kind of a preview. Or we can do an FBX for Unity. Look at that. It's ready to go right into Unity. I don't have to even take it into Blender, right? And I can say I want it to work with 60 frames per second with the skin, which is the texture. And I don't want any keyframe reduction. So I want no keyframe reduction. So it's like perfect. A lot of times we want to use keyframe reduction because it can reduce the overall load. And when I click on download, it will kind of download this animation. Right? Pretty cool. So we're going to be using this this semester for modeling. We're not going to do organic modeling manually because we just don't have the time. And there's a whole, it's not just a one semester thing. You need to learn a lot about organic modeling. That can take many semesters to learn. And because our college is not a design college, it's a programming college, I just want you to know how to use these models in Unity as opposed to make them. Questions around Mixamo? Or any thoughts? So again, it's going to be pretty fun to use. We're going to be selecting characters and making use of them. And there's some really cool things we can do with 3D. All right, so by now you should have at least, if you haven't downloaded your version of Unity, you should be pretty close to getting it done. And we're sitting at 5.11, and I've talked about several things that you have to download. Let's look back at our course shell to see if you've got everything that you need. So again, for today, what I'm looking at is a couple things. We want to understand what WebGL is. I've talked about it here. Version control overview is here. We've also talked about hard surface modeling, and some of you reported that the video is not available. Have you tried clicking on this? Yeah. So it looks like the author removed it. This was the problem with videos. The author has removed this particular video, but you can search for, that's unfortunate. And it does happen sometimes where, you know, he's done a, you know, we looked up hard surface modeling for you guys, and we pulled down a video that was pretty cool with Blender. Let's see if we can find that video. So hard surface modeling with Blender, which is kind of what we did. I bet you it's kind of the same stuff anyway, from the same guys, right? Again, lots and lots of great, you know, kind of videos here, right, as an example. And again, I bet you they're from the same guy, the same videos that we used before, right? So really great stuff that you can learn. We're also going to go into it as well today. Himali's asking, can we be able to export more than one animation in one model? Yes, we can. Yeah. We can download as many animations as you want. Typically, what we do is for a character model, we might have 30 or 40 animations, right? Because we got to think about moving left, moving right, you know, jumping, crouching, strafing, firing, getting hit, hitting, you know, melee combat, range combat, you know, looking to left to right, some kind of idle animation, climbing stairs, going downstairs, you know, sliding. These are all animations you could have, and many more, right? Because these are all things that a human can do. So compared to what we did with COMP305, where we had a very simple set of animations, there are many, many more animations we can have for 3D. All right. Any questions before we move on? So what I've covered so far is we've downloaded Unity. We haven't configured it yet. We're also going to download LD Player, and I've asked you to download the latest version of Blender because we're going to be using that. I've talked about Git and GitHub, right, as an example. Unity Colab is what we're going to talk about. That's that Unity Teams Advanced thing that we talked about earlier, right? And that's really what we want to talk about today. Today's lab, or this week's lab, is going to be, hey, let's make a simple model in Blender and bring it into Unity and put it up on GitHub. Those are the things that we're going to do this in the next half of today. All right. So one thing to note is by now you should have Unity 3D downloaded. Let's launch Unity and talk about how we're going to configure Unity for the first point. So again, I'm going to go into projects. I'm going to click new project. And one thing to note is you have in Unity version 2021.27F1, if you've downloaded and installed Unity correctly, you're going to see that there are quite a few templates that you can download. What we want is we want a 3D mobile core template. Okay, we can also download 3D you know, HDRP or URP, but it won't work properly a lot of times with mobile. So I think the safest thing to download is 3D Mobile Core, that template right there. So that's the one I want. And then what I want to do is name my project properly. So I'm going to call this project, again, it's COMP397, in the winter 2022 semester, and it's week 1. Okay, that's the project name. Again, you can use this project as a base for your lab 1. I'm going to specify where I want to put this. So again, under Centennial, under COMP397, I'm going to make a brand new folder called Winter 2022. All of my example projects are going to be in there, in Winter 2022. So this is where I want this project to live. So COMP397, Winter 2022, week 1, that's going to be in that week 1 folder, or Winter 2022 folder. I'm going to click Create Project, all right? And when I do that, you're going to see that when Unity launches, it takes quite a bit of time to launch. Now, there's a lot of stuff you have to consider that I'm doing. I'm broadcasting on YouTube. I'm on Zoom, okay, at the same time. I've got Blender open. I've also got Sketchbook Pro, right, also open right here. I'm going to start shutting down some of this stuff, right? Because otherwise, even for my 64 gigabit system, or gigabyte system, it doesn't really matter. It's going to take a lot of my processing power, especially when it comes to loading Unity. Sometimes what will happen also, guys, is I will spark out, which means like you'll see me kind of like go in and out of synchronization. So please, if you haven't had a chance to do this yet, download and install Unity's 2021.2.7F1, and then we'll go from there. And hopefully you're close to doing that right now. So what this is doing is it's actually forming up the library folder. That's what it's doing in Unity. Let's configure Unity for 3D mobile, all right? Notice I'm using the mobile 3D template here, okay? And the mobile 3D template comes with a bunch of stuff that we might need for the second half of the course, but I'm getting you to download it now so that way there's no issues. Okay, this, like we've talked about before, is a lousy layout. I don't agree with this layout. In Unity, what happens is for those people who've never used it before, each of these panels are something that you can tear away and reposition anywhere you want. For example, if I wanted the project panel to be somewhere else, I can move it, I can make it float, I can put it on another screen or whatever. The environment for all the panels are customizable, right? As an example. So I can move these panels anywhere I want. And don't worry, even if you make a mistake and close all of them, you can always go back to the default layout, always. It's always going to be available for you. Not a problem. However, I find this layout is a little bit less optimal. One thing is you have your hierarchy, which shows all the three-dimensional objects in the scene. This is your 3D world right here. And all the three-dimensional objects are shown here in the hierarchy, and your inspector is way on the other side. I don't agree with having to do this every single time. It doesn't make sense. And then your project files, all your assets are down here, and it takes up a large amount of space, which again, I don't agree with. I think there should be less space here and everything else. So typically what I do is when I start off with a layout like this in 2021.2.7F1 is I go to, instead of default, I go to tall. That's the first thing I do. So I change my layout to tall. Tall gives me a layout where I have my scene view here. I have my game view here, 3D game, right? As well as, if you notice on the left, I have my tool set to modify my 3D stuff right here. And this is a little floating panel that allows me to select objects, rotate objects, scale objects, and so on. I can take this little tool and put it on the top, okay? Or you can leave it floating if you so desire. It's not a big deal, right? What I want to do now is I want to take my assets down here. We're down here in the project area and slide it back so it's a list. Again, for those of you who've had me before, you've seen me and I've talked about this before. It's a personal gripe. I don't think that the default layout makes sense, right? And I like to work in this fashion. Actually, it's very similar to how we work in Blender. All right, so this is kind of the first part. And you can see that I have a sample scene, a main camera, and a directional light. Here in this part of Unity 3D, we have the scene space. This is kind of our editor. where we can edit and drag and drop objects into the scene. We'll be talking about this semester. And the game is a preview of what the game is going to look like on WebGL or a mobile device or whatever. Okay. So this is where we want to start. You also want to sign in if you can. So if you have access to Unity, again, I highly recommend you sign in. Go. I don't know why that didn't sign me in before, but that's okay. There it is. I'm signed in. And what you can do is, the one thing that's missing for this layout is the console. So what you can do is, any windows that are missing, you can go to Window, you can go to General, and these are all the typical windows we want, or tabs, if you will. I want to click on Console, which is going to give me a floating tab. Sometimes you get these weird errors. We can clear those. And we take that console and just drag it underneath the project area there. So now you have a setup where I have my project files that are kind of in a list form. I have my console right here, and I have my inspector. My inspector is context sensitive. When I click on a game object, then it appears, all the properties appear in the inspector, similar to what happens in the outliner on GitHub, on Blender. And if I want to save this layout, right, then I can do that. I can go to the layout, pull down right here, and I can go into save layout, and this would be Tom's 3D layout. Okay. And if I wanted to save this part, so I want to put this part up here too, I can do that. I can kind of save layout, right? Tom's 3D layout. I can update it. I can overwrite it, and now I have this little part here that goes here. One thing to note is, for me, I'm really unhappy with sample scene, right? When we start off with the sample scene, I'd like to rename it and restructure our files before we put it up on GitHub. So again, under scenes, I want to click once, click twice, and then rename scenes so that it has a square bracket around it. We've done this before for those people who've used me or who've worked with me last semester. You've seen this. If you're new to it, don't worry, just go with it. So scenes, the reason why I'm putting square brackets is because alphabetically, this is what the assets will show us. Do I really care for my tutorial info? This stuff, icons, scripts, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I could have all this stuff, but I really don't need the tutorial info at all. I can get rid of it, or I can hide it. So for me, let's just get rid of it, delete. I don't need the tutorial info, typically. I do need the editor, so I'm leaving the editor stuff in there. That's important. And I want to add additional folders to my assets. The way to do that is there's a couple ways. One is there's a little plus button right here where I can add in a folder. That's one way. I can right click as well and go create folder. And you can also go into assets, create folder, right? Those are the three ways you can do it. All right, so 3 different ways. I'm just going to right click here and go create folder. And I'm going to call this folder scripts with square brackets, like this. Remember, square brackets are going to align stuff inside of your assets so that they are at the top, right? So I can see them all the time. I use scripts and scenes more than other folders, and that's why I like to put them at the top. Okay. Notice the difference. Scripts is empty, so it looks like there is an outline for around the folder. This tells you that the folder is empty. Where this filled in folder, this tells you that the folder is full. It has stuff in it. Okay. In my scenes folder, I have a sample scene. Let's rename it by clicking once and clicking again and typing in main. It's going to ask you to reload the scene, and you should accept. Now it says main. That's the name of the scene. A scene is the container that all the other game objects live within. In other words, it's a game world. The scene itself is the entire world. All right, for you guys. There are 2 game assets or game objects that exist inside the scene. One of them is the main camera. Again, forgive me for those people who know this. One is the main camera, and the other one is a light, a directional light. The main camera is the way that is what Unity uses to view the scene when the game is in operation, right? So one thing to note is how to control what's inside the scene, inside the scene view. if I right click with my mouse when I'm in the scene view, I can orbit around, up and down, and so on, just by pressing the right mouse button. If I use the scroll wheel, I can zoom in and out. Okay, guys, it's super important when you're doing game dev, you need a 3-button mouse. Super important. We use it for all kinds of stuff. So if you don't have a 3-button mouse and somehow you're at home and you're using a touchpad, guys, go on Amazon and order a cheap 3-button mouse, please, today. Okay, it's required, or you're going to have a lot of trouble. All right, next. If I right click, notice that there's in the middle of the screen here, there's underneath the eye, there's these little buttons that look like the WASD keys. It's a way of getting you to remember that you can use WASD at the same time you're pressing your right mouse button. And if I do that, I got fly-through controls like this. I can fly through just like I'm using a, kind of a 3D character. I can fly in and out, and I can move around the scene. By pressing the right mouse button and using the WASD keys, I can go in and out. And if I use the shift key, I can fly faster, just like we were running. Okay? I can use the E key to go up and the Q key to go down, and elevation as well. So that's one way I would navigate around the scene. All right, so please remember that. I'm going to be using the WASD and the Q and the E keys all the time. Okay, so that's kind of how I navigate around the scene. And that's the, I've just clicked on the main camera. One rule for Unity is that every object that's inside of the hierarchy, which is kind of like the outliner in Blender, is a game object. Game objects share a single component, every game object. It's the transform component. The transform component includes the position of the game object in 3-dimensional space, X, Y, and Z components, rotation in degrees, and scale, right? So right now it's the scale of 1. You can increase the scale and so on. We're going to talk about this. The other thing that we can notice is when I click on an object in 3-dimensional space, again, guys, for people who know this, who are game students, forgive me. I'm talking to the non-game students right now, or who haven't had a lot of exposure to 3D environments, right? You have these 3 handles. When I click on the main camera, notice that on the top left corner over here, I have these controls, right, in Unity. I can use the Q key to make it so that my cursor is a hand where I can pan left and right, up and down, right? I can use the W key as a shortcut key so that I can use these little handles. These handles, right, are basically allows me to translate an object in 3-dimensional space. I can, around the blue handle usually is related to the Z axis, right? The red handle is the X axis and the green handle is the Y axis. In Unity, right, the Y axis is up. Not so in Blender. In Blender, if I go back to Blender for a second, you can see that actually that I can do the same thing in Blender. I can turn on, it kind of has the same set of controls here. In Blender, I can have the blue, which is the Z axis is up, and the green axis is kind of flat, right? So it's kind of interesting that it's totally different, okay? I'll talk about Blender in a bit. One thing to note that in Blender, if you're going to navigate the scene in Blender, which we're going to do later on in the second half of today, is you're going to be using the middle mouse wheel to do an orbit. That's what I'm doing. I'm clicking down and holding down the middle mouse wheel in Blender to do an orbit around the object, okay? But again, this is a 3-dimensional object in 3-dimensional space. You can see the axes, right? The only difference is that the alignment of the axes across different 3-dimensional programs, 3D programs like Blender's got Z up, where Unity has Y up. That's going to be a problem when we export from Blender into Unity. The object will always be rotated, and we can adjust for this, okay? Just letting you know. All right, so that is our main camera in Unity. We've got our directional light, which basically, here's a question I have for you guys, because I've been kind of talking nonstop for the last little while. Okay, guys, some of you are game developers, some of you aren't. Here's a question, and this is almost like a, matrix question. Does a light really exist in Unity or Blender? Are there really lights? What are your thoughts? Come on, guys, someone's got to take a crack. Is there a light? Do lights really exist? A light in Blender or Unity? It's a yes or no question. Take a crack at it. So I got a check mark. Josh says sorta, I guess. Okay, Josh, you're on the right track. Tatiana says no. She put an X. And Jerome says no, it's fake. I think Jerome and even Josh and everybody else kind of on the same track. Let me tell you why it doesn't really exist. Because really, what is a 3D object? If I look at an object like a camera, do I have a physical shape for the camera? It's really an algorithm more than anything else, right? So if I want to add an object in Unity, I can right-click anywhere in the hierarchy, right-click, and I can go to 3D object, and I can add a cube, right? There we go. There's a cube. There we go. And notice that the cube is positioned in a certain spot, minus 12, x, minus 5, y, minus 4, something, z. And if I want to, I can click these ellipses in the transform component of any object that's inside of the hierarchy and click reset, which resets the object back to its origin. If I double click on an object, I zoom in on it, if you will, right? So there's my object in three-dimensional space. But going back to this, it's like this. Does the object exist really in 3D? Are we really seeing a 3D object? The answer is we're seeing a representation of a 3D object on a two-dimensional screen. So too when we talk about lights. Lights are really a calculation that we're making. What we're doing with lights is we are changing the color of the pixel, right? From the position of the light in three-dimensional space. Changing the color of the pixel. And all the pixels that would have been affected by the different light that we're using in the scene. So what lights do is they change the color of the pixels, right? And really, what are pixels anyway? They're just data, if you think about them, right? Each pixel on the screen has a few things. It has a position, and it has a color. That's really it. That's what pixels are. If you look at if you're looking at a TV program or watching a movie, you see a bunch of pixels on the screen, okay? And they're different colors, but they're put together in a way that's a representation of a 3D object that we're looking at. It's not really there, right? The pixels are representing what a 3D object would look like. But it's not a real 3D object. We can't touch it, right? What it's doing is it's tricking our eyes, right, into feeling that it's 3D by doing two things. The type of projection that we're seeing on the screen, in this case, which is a perspective projection. A perspective projection we're going to talk about later on in this course is when an object is in perspective view, the farther away the object is, it appears to be smaller. The closer an object is, it appears to be bigger. But the object itself is the exact same size. It hasn't changed size. Just like if we were looking at an object, if we're downtown Toronto and we look at the CN Tower, when we're right at the base of the CN Tower, it's massive. It's like really massive. It's really tall. But if I'm in Scarborough, if I'm at Centennial, and I can look way over at the CN Tower, it looks really small. That's perspective, right? So it's the same thing that happens in 3D on a 2D screen. We're looking at an object that's represented on a 2D screen that is 3D. But really, it's just a collection of pixels that have been tinted by the position of the light. I'm trying to make it as simple as that. Okay, I know there's other things going on here. There's other calculations and algorithms we can talk about, but that is kind of a simple way of thinking about it. Tinted, pixels that are tinted. So example, this side of the cube seems to be darker than this side of the cube because the directional light is coming from this side, right? And we can see the directional light has an angle, right? The rotation of the object across the x-axis is 50 degrees. And the rotation of the light across the y-axis is negative 30 degrees. So that direction of the light gives us what appears to be shadows on one side or a darker side and a lighter side in the cube. Again, we'll talk about lighting as we get moving in this course. All right, so now that we've added a simple cube and everything else, let's save the scene. So Control S to save the scene. We have a scripts folder. We have a other assets we can add in. Normally we add things like materials. So I can right click and add a new folder called materials, right? I'm going to have a materials folder. I'm probably going to have a textures folder, right? Here's textures. I might also have an audio folder. So here's audio. I could also have an animations folder and a bunch of other stuff, okay? Or maybe even a models folder. So folder, models. And all these folders, notice that there are some folders that are filled in and some folders that are outlined. The outlined folders are empty. Filled in folders have stuff in them, okay? What I want is I want to be able to put all this structure up on GitHub and maintain the folders. Remember what we talked about on GitHub? You can maintain the folder structure by adding in a git keep file. Let's add that in now. So I'm going to right click anywhere in the assets folder in Unity and go to show and explore. And in Explorer, what I can do is I can look at the structure in my operating system. By the way, if you're using a Mac, it'd be show and finder. It's the same thing. Inside of my folders, we can see that I have a scripts folder that's empty, right? And I have several other folders that are empty, but I want to retain the structure when I put this up on GitHub. So I'm going to double click in my scripts folder and I'm going to add in a brand new empty file. Right click. I'm going to go to new and I'm going to go to text document. Now, if you can't see the extension like this, that's probably because in Windows, you have to check on file extensions under the view menu, right? Please do that and also check on hidden items. We always want to see hidden items and file name extensions. And then we can rename all of this to something like git keep. Yes. Again, so the file that we want to put in there is called a git keep file, right? And the git keep file we can copy, and put it anywhere inside of our code that there's nothing inside of. Like for example, an audio, there's nothing in the audio folder. Let's put a git keep file in there. Materials, there's nothing in the materials folder. Let's put a git keep file in there. And same thing with models and textures. All right, so we have git keep files and everything. Great thing is that Unity doesn't detect them. So if I go into audio, it looks like it's empty, right? It's not something that's compatible with Unity. But the great thing is it'll retain the folder structure if I put this up on GitHub. Let's do that now. So I'm going to get File, Save Project. And I want to, in order for me to put this up on GitHub, I'm going to exit out of Unity. Now I'm out of Unity, okay? And what I want to do is I want to go to Gitkraken. Here's Gitkraken for the first time. By the way, it's all being recorded for you. So if you're missing something, don't worry about it, right? And I'm going to go and start a local repo. Here, start a local repo. For me, what I'm going to be doing for you is I'm going to make one repo for all of your weeks. Every week that I make, I'm going to add another folder to your repository. For you, I want you to do the same thing for me. I want you to make a labs folder, and inside your labs, you're going to include every lab for the semester. And this way, I only have one repository that you're going to share with me privately. And it'll stop you from sharing like 10 repositories or 12 repositories, lots and lots of email. Okay, so what I want to do here is when I want to specify the folder, I'm going to click Browse, and I'm going to go up to Centennial. And you can see that I have this COMP397 folder here. And I also have this Winter 2022 folder. I don't want to go into the Winter 2022 folder. I don't want to do that. I want to stay way out here in COMP397 land, okay? And I want to leave the Winter 2022 folder in there. I'm going to click Select Folder now. And in the name of the repo, I want to call this Winter 2022. What it's going to do is it's going to create a repo inside of the Winter 2022 folder. A couple things I want. I want a gitignore file. So let's do that. So I'm going to say, let's add the Unity gitignore file. All right. That's definitely one thing I want. And I'm going to click Create Repository at this point. Again, the process is don't go right into your Winter 2022 folder. That's for all of your labs for Winter 2022. Don't do that. Stay outside in the COMP397 folder and then put the name of the folder that you want to target here in the name area. and then click Create Repository when you've selected the proper gitignore file. Remember gitignore, what it does? It ignores folders and files that are named inside the gitignore template. Let's create repository. And when you do, it's going to add everything in, okay? One thing it does when you add the gitignore file, right, as an example, it gives me my initial commit, right? And, well, we have to be cognizant of what's going on here, all right? We have a gitignore and a README file, right? And we're targeting the winter 2022 semester, right? But what have we really done? Did it really do anything? Well, let's take a look at the actual file system. So one thing to always do is let's go up to COMP397 and let's look at winter 2022. I have two files. I have W2022. Right? I made a mistake. That's okay. We're going to fix this again in a second. And I have winter 2022, which is the right name. Okay? This is where I want it to go because this is where my COMP397 file is, right? That's okay. You know, we can always close this down. If you made a mistake like I did, you can always close this down, go back into W2022 and delete it and try again. Let's do that one more time. Actually, it's good to do it because it's practice for us, right? Let's do it again. So again, I want to go back into Gitkraken. I want to start a local repo. I want to navigate to where my repo is, the higher up, let's say COMP397 land. And I want to select that folder as the main folder. And now let's put the proper name, winter 2022. How did I know it was wrong? There's no files. That's how I knew, right? Winter 2022. I want to select the gitignore file, which is Unity, right? There we go. And then I want to create repository. So this is the setup. Winter 2022, right? I'm targeting, I have a folder called Centennial College or Centennial COMP397, and this is going to be the directory that I'm targeting. I'm going to click Create Repository now and see the difference. Oh man, 15,000 files. What the hell? Why is it 15,000 files? Because my gitignore file is in the wrong place. So what I can do is I can go inside of winter 2022 and you can see that there's a gitignore file that's here. I can copy it and I can go into my week COMP397 W2022 week 1 and also put it in here. Okay, when I go back, you're going to see that now I'm down to 49 files. Okay, 15,000 files, including my library, to 49 files. This is why we want to do it this way. Does this make sense? 49 files. Let's stage all changes. This is like me doing a git add dot. And now we have a commit. We want to make a new commit where we're going to say added project files for week 1. Okay, commit changes to 49 files. There we go. And I want to push this up to GitHub. But remember, we don't have a GitHub remote at this point, right? So I'm going to click push, and it's going to say, do you want to make a remote? And the answer is yes, I do. And I'm going to target the remote, which is on Centennial College. And instead of calling it winter 2022, which makes no sense, I'm going to say COMP397. You can call it whatever you like, winter 2022. In your case, you can do the exact same thing. And all of your labs, personally, these are individual labs you'll need to submit. The first one is this week. You can put in this folder, COMP397, winter 2022. And then you are going to make yours private and share it with my last name. My last name, again, for those people, if you want to search me up to collaborate with me, is Tiliopoulos@hotmail.com. All right, I'll put that on the inside of YouTube as well. Here's the chat, right? That's what you put in there. So, and then you make it private and share it with me, okay? For me, I'm going to make it public because I want to share it with you, right? So I'm going to click Create Remote and Push. And it's going to say, if you did this for the first time, guys, it might say something like, could not connect to origin, double check your remote, URL, whatever. Sometimes it'll say this kind of weird stuff, okay? Don't worry about it. Okay, if I want to push, right, as an example, I want to push to my remote. As long as I I have it there. Sometimes Gitkraken is funny that way, but it'll totally work. And the way to check this is to go up on GitHub and check it out. So let's go and check it out. So I'm going to go github.com/Centennial College. And we can see that we have COMP397 Winter 2022. And I also have previously today COMP305 2022 because I'm also going to do one for them. Okay. So there's COMP397A. That's pretty cool. And if I look in there, I have another folder called COMP397 Winter 2022 Week 1. Cool. All right, awesome. What I can do is inside of my README file, I can change my README file online. So I can kind of add in a bit more information. So COMP397 in the winter 2022 semester. And then what I want to do is I'm going to say something like, repo for all demo projects for COMP397 in the winter 2022 semester at Centennial. Okay, that's what I can put in there. You can do something similar. You can say repo for all labs that you're going to submit for me, right? And then I'm going to click commit changes. So now you can see that I got a README file on the outside of my COMP397 Winter 2022 folder, and inside I have individual folders for each one of my projects, right? Why am I doing it this way this week or this semester and not an individual repo for each project? Because I find that for 100 students, 200 students, 300 students, I'm going to get 300 email every lab. 300 emails per lab, guys, or 200 emails per lab. It's just too much. So I've put it up on GitHub. So this is part of your lab 1. Lab 1, you're required to have a GitHub repository. That's what's required, okay, for lab 1. Now the repository has a week 1 a Unity repo in there, a Unity project, but it doesn't do anything right now. We have to complete that. But we're going to do that when we come back from break. Okay, we're going to take a short break and we're going to come back and we're going to complete that. But now we have our first project. If any of this is foreign to you, if you've never done it before or if you've never used GitHub, remember that we're recording this. You can always go back and look at this thing again. Okay, let's go back and just check mark what we've done so far. So again, things we've done, we've set up GitHub account, and that's the first thing. We didn't do an intro to Blender yet, but we downloaded it. We downloaded and configured Unity 3D. We did that with the latest version. We've also downloaded Blender. We haven't configured it yet. We haven't downloaded LD Player yet, but we will. Okay, this is in the second half. We're going to still do those things. All right, let's take a short break, and when we come back, so again, I'm right now we're sitting at 5:48 p.m. This course runs until 6:30, right? So again, we're just a little bit over half. I'm going to take 5 minutes just to take a bathroom break. We're going to come back, and we're going to continue with the second part. Questions before we go on break? All right, let's end the stream, and we'll come back at 5:55. So 5 minutes to 6. All right. So I'm just going to